Well, hello and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. I am Terri Cole. If you don't know me, if you don't know that, I am a licensed psychotherapist, a relationship expert, and the founder of Boundary Bootcamp and Real Love Revolution. And it just so happens, you guys, that today marks the beginning of Real Love Revolution season. So we're going to spend the next 2 months yakking about love and codependency and narcissists and sex and passion and how to attract the right person into your life and how to up-level the love if you're in a long-term relationship. We're going to hit all the things. So I'm super psyched that you're here. And actually tomorrow begins the first Wednesday Wisdom. So those of you who know, every year during Real Love Revolution season, I do a live stream on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in my business Facebook page. Or, ladies, I have an all-female Real Love Revolution group on Facebook. So either place. So it goes live in both places. And I would love to see you there and answer all your questions. So right on, let's dive in, shall we? The next probably 8 episodes of the Terri Cole Show, I'm basing on questions that people have sent in to me. So this one was about someone sharing their experience with feeling like they were too much of a pushover, and they were confused and thought that that was impacting their ability to sort of be authentic in relationships, and her relationships continue to end. It's like it's good in the beginning and then it gets bad. So this episode is called, Is People Pleasing Wrecking Your Love Life? That is the question that I'm going to be answering. As always, there'll be a downloaded little guide for you so you don't have to take notes. I really would love it. I mean, unless you're driving, but if you're not driving, literally take a minute. Take this time. We'll probably be together for about 18 to 22 minutes this morning, today, whenever you're listening to this. Just give yourself the gift of your own presence if this is something that speaks to you and that you are interested in learning more about. Because who doesn't want love? How about together we make 2020 the year of epic, real love in your life, whether you're in a relationship or not. Because a lot of times, you guys know, you're in a long-term relationship. Maybe it has the potential to be epic, but it's kind of like day in, day out. I do this, you do that, that's it, you know? So how do we sort of bring the passion back into those relationships as well, which I will be talking about throughout this season of Real Love Revolution. So I'm going to start by talking about how this impacts, how the people-pleasing syndrome, or as Harriet Breaker called it, the disease to please. She had an amazing book out. She is now deceased, R.I.P. But she had a book that came out, I think, in the early 2000s that was called Curing the People-Pleasing, the Disease to Please, Curing the People-Pleasing Syndrome. And her work really heavily influenced my work on codependency and the way of framing this, because I just thought it was so brilliant, and now I'm going to share it with you. So why do we care about this? A lot of times people will be like, well, what's wrong with being nice? Hey, nothing's wrong with being nice. But when you have the people-pleasing syndrome, you're not being nice driven by love or equanimity or a generous heart. You're being nice driven by fear. And so part of the answer to this woman's question is that when we're driven by fear, when we're overgiving or afraid to say no to someone else, that, and I'm going to give you a way. Don't worry, I'll give you the 4 questions so you can figure out if you actually are suffering from the disease to please. But when you think about it, we're not being ourselves. We're not being authentic. We're not being honest. We are trying to give that person the answer that will keep us from having a conflict with them or being rejected. There's lots of fear around why anybody would fall into this people-pleasing behavior. But in this episode, I'm going to give you some steps that you can take. The first step is for you to identify if you think you are a people pleaser. And then I'll move into some things that you can do to raise your awareness about why, and some things you can do to make it better. So start with, I'm going to give you the questions that you're going to ask yourself, and these will all be in the downloaded little guide for you. so that you can determine if you have the disease to please. So the first question to ask yourself is, do you say yes when you really want to say no? That's number one. Number two, do you apologize often? Not only when you're not sorry, but sometimes when you're angry. Number three, do you avoid confrontation at all costs? Is it like not your most favorite thing? And number four, do you put everyone else's needs above your own? So, if you answered yes pretty much to any one of those, you have some form of the disease to please. How bad you got it, we'll move into. So, if you really want to do, I have an exercise that I would have my clients do when they first would become a client, if I felt like they had this, that I would ask you to take the next 48 hours to become mindful of these four things. You don't have to change anything, but I want you to really think about in the next 2 days, or pick 2 days to do it over, and how many times did you say yes when you wanted to say no? How many times did you apologize when it wasn't your fault, and actually when you were pissed, but you said you were sorry even though you kind of weren't sorry? Every time you avoided a confrontation, even though you had something to say, because of course that's what it's about. And every time that you put everyone else's needs above your own, and there's a little caveat there, because if you have minor children, it is your duty to put their needs above their own if those needs are conflicting, right? We can't tell a 9-month-old, I'll see you in 2 hours because I need a break, right? I'm going to take a yoga class, obviously not. But you know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about as mothers or spouses, or if we're taking care of elderly parents. Those are needs that, we've already made some kind of a pact, an agreement that they're going to come above our own at times. But if you have a partner, you can share that burden. I'm really talking about when you really have the people-pleasing syndrome or the disease to please pretty badly. It's like everyone's needs come above your own. And what do you think that breeds? And why do you think we care about this? Well, obviously, it breeds a shit ton of resentment at some point. So you're going to take 2 days, 48 hours to write down when you wanted to do these things, or you did do these things, so that you can start to get a clear picture of who are you most afraid to have a confrontation with, or to actually say no to. You start to get a clear vision of how you're acting these things out in your life. But let's move it into, how does this impact our love life, right? Because that's kind of what we're talking about. But I wanted you to establish if you have the people-pleasing syndrome or the disease to please. And if you're watching this, I'm going to say you probably said yes to one of those questions, or this wouldn't resonate with you, I imagine. So let's move into how this impacts us and how to learn more about why you have this. Well, you have to look at your downloaded blueprint around love and boundaries. So it's not just around love, it's around love and the people-pleasing syndrome. So if you had a model of behavior that you grew up with in your parents' marriage, where one of your parents was always giving in or acquiescing to the other parent, and they never said no, right? One parent dominated, let's say, then this is how it gets downloaded into our unconscious mind, that if I love someone, I should say yes to them. I don't want to displease them. You could also have it downloaded, and there'll be questions, a couple of questions I'll give you about your downloaded love and people-pleasing blueprint, meaning I call them blueprints, right? Because they're in your unconscious mind, and they're kind of like an architectural blueprint for a house that someone else designed. So when we bring them from the basement, or your unconscious mind, as I call it, up to the main part of the house, or your conscious mind, now you have a choice to go, oh, that's so interesting. I've related this way to romantic partners, not saying no, letting them dominate, having terrible boundaries, because that's what I saw. And so unconsciously, I believed that's what love should look like. When we bring it up from the basement, which you will do when you answer the questions that I give you about this, you get to go, oh, That's really not necessarily how love has to be. That's just really how it was for my parents or my caregivers. I think I want it to be different. I think I want to be able to assert myself in a love relationship. And the most important thing about all of this is that when you have the disease to please, people don't authentically know you. Because if you're not telling them how you really feel about something, or you're saying yes when you want to say no, they don't know you. You're giving them faulty or corrupted information about who you are and what you want in life. How you feel about things, and even small things, can end up creating a big negative or corrupted ripple about you. So if you are not honest about small things because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, you don't want them to think that you're a bitch, you don't want all those things, and they make a special dinner for you somewhere at a place that you don't even like that kind of cuisine. So let's say it's, I don't know, Japanese food, say, or Italian food. If you are too afraid to say you don't like it, even though of course you can find something to eat there, but basically generally it's not your thing, now this person might on every special occasion be making a reservation at a very expensive Italian place because it's your special place, and they think that you like it because you didn't tell them that you don't. And the fear of letting someone else down, or the embarrassment, like for some reason it's like we feel embarrassed to tell them we don't like something. Why is that? They didn't create the restaurant, but we don't want them to be offended or to be hurt. But here's the thing. We have to learn how to have those conversations, because ultimately, how can anyone authentically love you if you don't ever let them authentically know you? They can't. And this is why in my therapy practice back in the day, when I had a full-blown practice, mainly with women, a lot of them with issues around love and boundaries, even the women who had it all, even the women who are like, I have what everyone else wants, and I feel like guilty, ashamed, embarrassed that I'm not happy. They weren't happy. I knew why. Because they had built a whole life kind of on a bunch of lies. Even the ones who were very successful business-wise. So it's like they didn't have the disease to please when it came to business. Somehow they were able to compartmentalize. And a lot of my former clients, that was the truth. But at home, their partner didn't really know them deeply, because they were all about just keeping things humming. They wanted to just, are the kids on track? We got money in the bank. Are the kids going to good schools? Like, is everything okay? Doing for everyone else, basically being a high-functioning codependent. But there's this lack of satisfaction. And the thought kind of was, is this all there is? And the answer is no. Because being deeply known is something that is the only way to really create epic, real love in your life. And so can you see how, if you have the disease to please, that messes with your love life if you're single? Because A, it's not that interesting. And the people that you attract when you're a yes person are people like narcissists. People who are self-absorbed, people who are selfish, people who want it to be all about them. And even if you don't attract that person, right? Even if you attract a nice person and you kind of have the disease to please, they still won't know you, because you're not telling them the small things that are bothering you, or the nuances of your preferences, your desires, what you want in life. And that's the stuff that real healthy relationships are made up from, is our uniqueness, who we actually are. So that's the first piece, is you're going to do the 48-hour thing and see if so you can start to really get a clear idea of how badly you have the disease to please, and in what situations does it get kicked up the most. And then you're going to move into answering the questions, which is your downloaded blueprint questions, just a couple, because you don't need a lot. And it's I can't make something that's 17 pages long because nobody would want to do it. So I'll give you a couple of questions there. But moving into how can you take the first step in the right direction, like in your love life, whether it's an established relationship or you're looking for love or you're dating on the dating apps. What is the first step? that you can take. So let's just hit if you're dating. If you're dating, the first step is to be very aware of if you're interacting with someone before you've met them, but it's like you're going to plan to meet up or whatever, how are they handling the meetup? Are they saying, hey, let's meet somewhere that's convenient for me, even if they don't use those words? Or are they saying, asking you questions, where would you like to go? What would you like to do? And if you have the disease to please, you're probably like, oh, I don't mind, I'm easy. But the truth is, I'm going to ask you not to. So the steps that you can take in the dating world is assert yourself a little bit. If they say, what would you like to do? You could say, well, I like, dinner would be nice, and I like these different cuisines, and there's a decent one near my house. If you want to come this way, I live wherever. Do you know what I mean? Rather than being so overly sort of compliant or pleasing to the other person, from the beginning, you're going to pay attention to how sort of thoughtful they are about you. And then you're going to do something different. And instead of being the I'm not fussy person or it's all good with me person, you're actually going to assert yourself in a very mellow way. But you're going to do it. Because this now we'll start to see how the person really is. Because if we never push back, if we never talk about what we really want, that person is falling in love with, quote unquote, an image of you and the information that you don't get back. If someone is a narcissist, let's just say, and you push back on something, they will reveal themselves, despite themselves. They will reveal. They'll be pissed that you're pushing back, right? So we want to know those things up front. If the person is nice and normal and you push back a little, not push back, but say, just tell them your preference. It's super simple. And they're like, great, I would love to meet you in a place that's convenient for you. That would be amazing. So that's going to be sort of the small step in the dating world of asserting yourself, not having the disease to please. So basically you're actually opening the door to the possibility of you finding someone who falls in love with you, your actual authentic self, instead of sort of trying to be the perfect partner or dating person or easy breezy person and then being trapped in that box for the next 5 decades, right? We don't want that. And for those of you who are in a relationship, I want you to do a little list. We'll do a little inventory of what are the things that you don't talk to your partner about right now that bother you. Anything. Is there something that someplace they like to eat or food they like that you've just let them think for 15 years you like? Is there something that they do? Maybe it's something sexual that you've never told them you actually do not like that, but you just suffer through it. You're going to make a list of either things that you do that you don't like. And here's the thing. I'm not talking about the ways that we compromise in long-term relationships. Of course you will do things that you wouldn't do if you weren't with this person, because that's called compromising. If they like to do something, I see a lot of live classical music with my husband. I would probably never do that in my life if I weren't with him. And in 22 years, I haven't really grown to like it anymore. But I love him and it makes him happy, so I go. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, and I don't torture him saying I hate it, because I know he loves it. He knows it's not my thing, but I go the same way he does things with me. So that's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about not telling the truth. It's more about if you're doing things and he's like, I got tickets to this thing because you love motocross racing. And you're like, but I actually don't. We're going to slowly but surely choose some place in your relationship to start to assert yourself. And you don't have to say, oh, I've been lying to you for 20 years. It's not necessary. You're allowed to change your mind. It's never too late to turn the ship around. Right? You're allowed to like something different or say, I want to break out of this and I want to do something different. But I want you to be aware of the small ways in that long-term relationship or in that dating situation that you are abandoning your truest self to keep the peace, because that's what people pleasers do. And we're going to slowly but surely take steps to stop doing that, because it doesn't keep the peace. Right? What is, what's her name? Cheryl Richardson has a great quote about this, which is, keeping the peace with others starts a war within yourself. And how friggin' true is that? So very true. So I hope this episode was helpful to you. Please, if it is, share it with people in your online world. If you love the podcast, please go to iTunes and leave us a great referral, recommendation, what do they call them? Review, that's what it's called. Because we have a lot of amazing reviews and we're trying to get to 1,000 5-star reviews. I think we have 300 and something or 200 and something now. So, and I've never even asked anyone in all these 5 years to do that. Those just happen naturally. And I thought, well, I wonder if I asked people who really listen to it and love it, if they would give us a good review so other people could find it, right? That's my whole trip, is that I want to empower as many people across the globe as possible. So the more love that you give it, or the more that you share it, the more people, this positive ripple effect, that together we're so much more powerful than just me alone with my little microphone in upstate New York. You know what I mean? So thank you, thank you, thank you. If you would do that, I would super appreciate it. Please join me tomorrow for the first Wednesday Wisdom of Real Love Revolution Season 2019. So, 2019 going into 2020. I hope you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.